Right, so introductory guide to Cypher. Now, my personal favourite of the Sentinel agents. I'm probably going to do a video on Killjoy at some point, although I don't play Killjoy that much. So I'd say Cypher and Killjoy are what I consider to be like the two hard Sentinels in the game. You have other Sentinels like Sage and Chamber, but they kind of fit into different categories. So Cypher's like one of the #1 agents for holding a site by himself on defense. So that's your role on defense on Cypher is kind of like an anchor position. You're sitting on site, and you're getting early info on the site and whatnot, and you're denying entry and you're controlling the map. That's where Cypher excels on both sides. Is just obtaining map control and keeping map control. So I'm going to use Split again because I think Split's quite a good like example map. It has quite good features for explaining how things work. So there's no particular site you'd have to play Cypher on. You kind of just whatever you're most comfortable on, whichever you think you've got your best setups for. But on Split, I would play Cypher on B personally. So the first thing is probably the most important thing is tripwire positions. This is kind of not necessarily. I mean, all of Cypher's utils is important, but this is probably the most important to get right. To think about. So you want to learn like a few. You only have two trips around, but you want to learn sort of more than 2 spots for them, so that you can switch them around during a whole match. Because what you want to try and do is to not let the attackers learn your setup and just have it figured out, because they know exactly what your plan is with the setup. Cypher's actually quite an easy one to counter, so you need to kind of just be playing mind games with them, switching things up, kind of catching them off guard with things. The trips serve 2 different purposes. There's kind of 2 ways you can use them. The first one is literally just for info. You want to put them in a position where they can't be jumped without being broken. So that means it's effectively like a crouched head height. So you want to get the height right of a tripwire placement. You want to crouch, and you want to aim for the line that shows up to be effectively passing through your own forehead. So about there, or just above, like that. And what that means is no one can crouch under the trip, and no one can jump over the trip without there being any kind of elevation. You need to be careful on certain spots, on certain maps, and this is where you're gonna. This will happen eventually, where you find you're placing trips and they're just walking past them, and it's basically because there's a jumpable position for them. So let's say I'm here. Ignore if this is a good trip spot or not, but let's say I want to place one here, and I think, okay, that's placed. You need to think about if there's any way of them jumping over them like that. So just be mindful of that. Work out how secure the trips actually are. Now, it might be that this trip's okay. If you're playing close to the trip, you are going to hear them jump over the tripwire, so that's not necessarily an issue, but don't. If you're playing on the other side of the map from a trip that you've placed, then just be mindful that, is it a secure tripwire? Are they going to be able to jump over it? Because your team is going to place quite a lot of responsibility and reliability in you holding flanks, or holding angles, or map control, or whatever with the trips. So just make sure that you're learning some reliable tripwire positions. So that's one of them. One of the uses for the trip. That's like the most default use of the trip. That works defense and attack. On attack, you'll place them on the default flank positions. Let's say you're going to play mid or whatever. You're going to look for picks mid. You don't want to hold B yourself with your gun or whatever. You want to place trip. Now the other thing that can happen is that your opponents can see trips from a long way away if they're used to where they're being placed. Well, they can't see them, but they can predict them from a long way away. Now, the trips only glow for the opponents when they're close to them. However, a good opponent will eventually learn your tripwire positions. So just think about that as well. Like, for example, if I've been caught several times by a trip that's placed here, as a defender that's trying to flank or whatever, I may start to destroy the tripwire early in anticipation. So I might here and just pre-fire the trip and shoot it out, and that now means that the attackers then have to check that, and actually I've been able to kill that trip without actually pushing all the way up to it. So yeah, try where possible to place trips in positions where the opponent has to get close to them in order to see them or shoot them. But this still works. This is still a way of, this does hold flank, you know. There is no way of them getting past over this trip unless they're a jet or a raise. And like I said, if you're close to the tripwire, then you're going to hear them jump over it. So that's use case 1 of a Cypher tripwire. Use case 2 of a Cypher tripwire is if you already know someone's going to push somewhere, you're actually using it to net yourself a free kill or whatever. So, now these type of tripwires are a little bit more difficult to place because you want them in positions where people aren't going to look. You might not actually always place them at head height. You don't have to place them so that they can't be jumped or ducked under. You can place them on lower to the ground. For example, you could find a spot like that, which is a really weird spot. You know, they don't have to be as reliable because you're already prepared for them pushing it. But the idea is you use the trip, and you use trips in conjunction with your cages. Now, what will happen is, if an enemy walks into the trip without shooting it, it will detect them, and it will ping them with an outline. And this is where you use your cage. And you take advantage of that outline, and you take a gunfight that's very favourable for you. And you can shoot people through the cages onto their outlines. So I might place one here as they're taking sight with a cage, and I might play far back, and I have different plans as to what I want to do. I think they're fighting, kill one, I pop that, I can block off angles, maneuver around the site, someone triggers a trip here, I can fight them through the cage, whatever. It's a lot about positioning and timing with Cypher. You've got to sort of fine tune your setup. It's a lot of trial and error. You are just going to find people just jumping over trips, always shooting trips. And this is when you've just got to switch them up and move them about different positions, like that, or whatever. So this gives you different kinds of info. So now you can hold this angle only, and you're guaranteed to get info if they've lurked through to here. So it's all about controlling the map and having security in angles and stuff like that. So that's kind of the trips and the cages. Obviously on attack you can use the cages kind of like smokes. And obviously they're a lot more limited than smokes, but you can place them kind of like jet smokes in terms of they're short ways of blocking off angles. If I'm pushing out B, I'm going to need an actual smoke for heaven, but I don't necessarily need smokes for these positions. I can have like a short-term smoke. Say I want to lurk out, I want to fight someone here. I can actually isolate sort of 1v1s if there's a crossfire. A person playing there and a person playing here. I fight this person for a bit. I know there's someone else here and I want to ignore them and challenge this person. I can throw a cage, I can move in, and this person has a reduced chance of being able to fight with the other person as well. Quite a good clutch character for that reason. I think Cyphers, you know, and Sentinels in general are really good for clutching. You have lots of info, watch your back, and the Cypher cage in particular. Are like mini smokes for yourself. Next thing, of course, is the camera, and this is also like similar to the trips. You have like varied ways of playing it. You have super default stuff, which is literally just like watching a site, play on site, you call if they're coming, and then you call rotates for your team. You can have different aggressiveness of cams. You can have them placed above where they walk out, so it makes it harder for them to shoot. So for example, let's say I have a trip and a cage or whatever like that. They trigger a trip wire. I can see them walking out, and if they want to shoot the cam, they actually have to look backwards to get it, which exposes them more, makes them more vulnerable, makes it more pressure for them. So they might walk out, trigger this. I might ping one on a cam, and the dart gets stuck in them, and I can shoot them through the cage as well. Some things to think about. The other thing you can do, obviously on attack you're lurking and taking map control or whatever. On defense you can also look for map control. You hear lots of noise on A. You can push out with B and try and see if you can take more control. I might push out, clear this angle, and then sit further up. And this gives my teammates earlier info if they're rotating back to B, as opposed to just sitting on site itself. You can also leave sort of more advanced cameras, and what I mean by advanced is sort of further forwards on the line of defense, like there for example. If I can get up to here safely, place a cam here, I can fall all the way back, help a teammate hold mid, and I can just check my cam and I get really good earlier info on B. If people are sat out B like a lurker or something, you can spot them, and I can still use the cam to shoot people running out, and then whatever, shoot them from sight again. And the cameras are the same with the trips. People are going to learn where they are, learn the spots. It's about rotating them around as well. So if I keep placing the cam here every round, the opponents are going to get wise to it and they're going to be prepared to shoot it. And they may even start pre-firing it before it's exposed, because if you've not been on your camera for a few seconds, it's invisible. However, it's not indestructible. So, you know, like someone might swing and immediately take out the camera. So yeah, to get value out of it, you want to keep moving this around as well, trying different spots. If there's a site you play commonly, you may want to just look on YouTube for, you know, professional or like Cypher main spots. People have specific setups. There's all kinds of stuff you can do with the trips, weird angles. It's really niche, like specific stuff that will, you know, attach to weird angles and really catch people off. When you're attacking with Cypher, you're holding map control again. The number one responsibility is holding flank for your teammates, but you're also looking for picks, you're looking for map control. You might lurk on some rounds, and that means to kind of sneak about, try and get any info. It could be audio, it could be footsteps, it could be just peeking angles, slowly sitting up, taking aggressive positions, catching rotates. If I can get into middle, for example, and sit here, and then maybe I have teammates that are pushing up onto A, up ramp or whatever, I could sit here and catch a timing on someone waiting to rotate through mid. Cypher's a lot about timing, and you're just going to build up a kind of instinct over time as to when to peek, when to push, where to sit, that kind of stuff. There's no like textbook Cypher really. It's a lot of just experimentation and timing. And again, you've got to think about how much util you want to use, because every time you place something, it's giving away your position. So for example, if I'm trying to sneak up mid, I might not want to place a cam mid because they'll hear me place a cam and get on my cam. So I may want to just not use any util at all. I may just want to have a good position, save my util for later. Maybe I want to get one pick of a guy rotating, and then I want to block off that angle and come across to here. so I can't get traded. That's a really good thing to be able to do as a lurk as well, is to sort of get one and then get out, try and survive if you can. And of course you have the ultimate as well, so that's really valuable on rounds where you have your ultimate to try and find that one pick for your team. Not only does it get you a pick, but it gets you a lot of info afterwards if you use the ult on someone straight away. So that's kind of how Cypher works. And again, you can swap sites a bit. If you think, oh, they figured out my setup on B on defense, I can go to A for a few rounds and come back. Switch up what you do on attack as well. If you're silent walking up mid 12 rounds in a row, people are going to start looking for you. You don't need to lurk every round. Some rounds you can just go with your team. Maybe it's a good idea to start the first few rounds just going with your team, and then you're kind of surprising them later on in the half by lurking, switching up your playstyle. It's all about timing, positioning, surprising, not doing set plays all of the time, and kind of just making decisions on the fly. You're never going to really, if you're lurking on an attack round of Cypher, you're never really pre-planning out the round. You're just seeing what happens, responding to info accordingly. And you may even find you get sight for free sometimes if you're sat B, no one pushes B, your teammates are faking on A, you can walk out B, you take B control, and then you can call that you have B control, and then it's really about trying to keep that control. So maybe I've saved a trip, I can place a trip CT, I can cam somewhere on heaven, and I can keep hold of B until my teammates have rotated. So it's just about being sneaky and capitalizing on timing and positioning and all of that kind of stuff.